Welcome to Roleplay Geeks. This is Steve-O, a.k.a. The Other Steve.
This is your token hippie, John.
I'm Jim, and Steven has Frank on his chest.
So I thought I knew what I was going to say based on the introduction that we just scrapped to do this one. And it doesn't work anymore because Jimmy decided to bring up the fact that I have a rabbit on my chest.
Okay, let's start over.
What? Man,
do it again.
Good enough. This is, you know what I mean? This is, that's pretty standard intro for us.
But I want to hear what Steven was going to say.
All I was going to say was, based on the way the first one went, by the time it got to me, it was quite obvious that Frank was the key piece in our Jenga tower because it all just came crashing down.
What are you talking about, man? It comes crashing down every week, and it usually is Jimmy's piece that causes the collapse.
Hey, not cool, man.
Not cool, man.
Calling me out on the air like that.
So out there, listeners, in case you haven't guessed, Frank is not with us this morning. He had to go pick up one of his furry critters from the vet at the last minute. I'm not sure if it's his badger or his ferret. Anyway, he has to go pick up one of his animals. So he may join us later. He may not. We don't know. So I guess I'm going to do the impromptu hosting thing. Before we get started, just want to remind everyone to rate and review the podcast. Whenever you do that, the algorithms, the way they are set up, bumps us up in the ranking. The more ratings and reviews we get, and it helps other people find the show. And really appreciate everyone that's been listening. We definitely have some loyal listeners. And I want to give just a little brief shout out to Jeremy Burke, who reached out to me indirectly to let me know he's been listening every week. So thanks, Jeremy. And if anybody wants to reach us, especially if you have a topic or you have a comment that you would like, you've heard something on the show, you want to comment on it, reach us at roleplaygeeks@roleplaygeeks.com. And if you have a topic suggestion or something you'd like to hear us discuss as a group, we definitely will consider that. If you email us and have an opinion you disagree with John on what he thinks about, Root or something like that, then we may even read it on the show. Just depends on what you say.
Why am I being singled out? Why?
I don't know, man.
Oh,
I'm typing an email right now.
So.
I have like 2 emails I need to send about John.
Well, I don't think it counts if we send emails to each other. So
I'm going to use a fake name.
You know what, man? You just go for it. Do whatever you need to. So what we're going to talk about today, we're just going to discuss a few news items that we've come across. I've got a few things. Jimmy, I know you've got a couple of items. You want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Wizards of the Coast got hit with another lawsuit.
I saw that.
Yeah. So apparently, don't know too much about it yet. There's, it looks like they were unhappy with, so the company that filed the lawsuit, it's breach of contract kind of thing. It looks like it's because the company that was creating stuff for Wizards of the Coast was really bad at translating things in South Korean. So I think
was it South Korean? Because when I read that article, and I didn't find anywhere in there that it actually said what language they were translating to, at least the article I read. And what was the name of that company? I saw that, but I don't have it in my notes.
Oh, see,
did you see that, Stephen?
I closed it down.
Gale Force, you mean?
Gale Force,
yeah,
that's
Force
it.
9.
That's it. Yeah. See, leave it up to Stephen to be the responsible one.
Stephen knows everything, man.
Everything.
He's got that silky smooth radio voice and, the knowledge and a rabbit on his chest. So anyway, what else did you see on that?
Just that they, at least initially, it looks like Wizards of the Coast was unhappy with some of the translations that were going out for some of the products that they had already approved in other languages. I guess they're primarily doing stuff like Game Master screens, cards, that kind of thing, accessories. So it's
I think what I read was Wizards of the Coast was unhappy with their work and wanted to discontinue the contract, but they have a contract. Gale Force 9 has a contract until the end of 2021. And so Wizards of the Coast got slapped with a breach of contract worth a few $1 million, I think, is what I read. Because, who knows? I'm sure that in Wizards of the Coast contract, it has some kind of clause in there that if they're not happy with the work, they can cancel it at any time. So, but Gale Force 9 apparently thinks that their work was good. So who knows? I don't know. I don't read any other language other than English, so it's not going to affect me any. But if we have any bilingual listeners out there, it may affect you.
Right. So, and I don't know how, they're a pretty big company. So, they'll probably get hit with a couple of lawsuits every couple of years. I don't know. I don't stay on top. Stephen, do you know how often they get hit with lawsuits?
Well, if I search no, I don't. Jesus Lord.
You know everything.
I'm not that into their data stream there. Oh, yes. I remember back in July, it seems the Wizards of the Coast was hit by 3 lawsuits, 2 of which... No! But thank you for thinking that. I appreciate that.
Well, I think it's funny, back before Wizards of the Coast, and it's one of those things where Wizards of the Coast is the big kid on the block. I mean, they're the juggernaut of role-playing games. So they're always going to be the one in the forefront of these big lawsuits and all that kind of stuff. And whenever TSR, before they were, which I know some kind of iteration of TSR's back, but when it was the original TSR, I heard they were nicknamed They Sue Regularly because they apparently sued all the time, to try and get people not to publish things and supplements and stuff all the time. So I'm sure Wizards of the Coast has a massive legal team on staff right now that are handling those things and handling like the Dragonlance books and all their other lawsuits. They probably have lawsuits we don't even know about. So, just the way it works for a big corporation.
Yep. And
Anybody
so
else?
the other thing I have really quickly is there's a new book out by the Wizards of the Coast. Tasha's help me out here, Stephen. I have it here. I love
it when you
up.
come prepared, Jimmy.
I just
if you
forget
could see
stuff.
the video, if you could see the video feed, you would see Jimmy furiously scrolling his mouse wheel. So.
I forget stuff so easily. I'm like a rabbit. I'm like Steven's rabbit on his shirt. I forget stuff.
So that should be that's actually a portrait of Jimmy on his shirt.
That's right. So Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I was going to order it, but I decided, nope, I'm going to go down to my local hobby shop, Four Horsemen. I'm going to pick it up there, along with a couple of other books or goodies for another contest coming up in December. We're getting ready to hit our next milestone of downloads, and it's going to be about Christmas time, so I thought that would be a nice little gift to have. And so I haven't actually gone through it myself, but it looks like they have a lot of subclasses that look interesting. And lately I've been playing a monk. It's the first time playing a monk, and I've grown into it. He still seems a little underpowered, but a lot of that could be just my lack of experience, both playing tactically and playing a monk. But they have a new subclass for the monk that looks really interesting called Way of Mercy, and it gives additional healing powers for the monk to heal other players. So I thought that was interesting. And they have subclasses for Ranger, Paladin, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. I didn't see one in there for Druid, but they're... Yep. Druids. Actually, it looks like they have subclasses for all of them. Artificer, even, yeah.
So is that something that you're going to try and transform your monk and see if Andrew will allow it? Or you just want to read about it?
Yeah, I'll probably transfer it and just see. Well, it depends. I still get to do my flurry of misses, and then I get to heal. So I think, yeah, maybe I'll do that. Oh, for sure. And not just the monk. I mean, I think all the other subclasses look really interesting as well. So, yeah, once I get the book.
Anything for a cleric?
They do. The Peace domain offers an interesting idea for a pacifist-type character. And seeing how you spend most of your time in webbing, that might be good. in a game chock full of fighting. Don't worry, it still offers bonuses for attacks and healing, complete with an ability for peace-bonded members of the team to jump in and take big hits for each other.
Yeah, I would be into playing that because I'm trying to play my character, my cleric, which I've never really had much experience with. I'm trying to play him, and of course we're in Underdark where all these evil creatures are rolling around and we're supposed to interact with them. And my character, I've been trying to role play him as a complete teetotaler. I don't drink alcohol or
curse,
do anything fun. I have no vices. So, I try to play that I'm repulsed almost 98% of the time because we're in this evil place, and it's really working on my psychosis a little bit. If we had just a little bit more powerful spellcaster in the group, like we don't have a mage, unfortunately, or magic user, I would be all down with playing a complete pacifist where I just heal, where I just do those sort of things. But right now my magic is, I have some pretty powerful offensive spells like Spirit Guardian and things that's really got us out of a few jams, so I can't really do that now. But I would like to try that. If we had just a little more offensive power as a group, I would definitely try that. That would be cool.
And that's pretty much all I have. We'll have more on Tasha's once, we all get our hands on it. I don't know if Steven's had a chance to look through it yet. He's usually on top of that kind of stuff in the D&D world, more so than the rest of us, I think.
I haven't, but I was thinking that I might want to have that book, and I was, looking at to see what the hardback gives you, and what I found was there seems to be more than a few people who are getting books with the bindings messed up. So pages falling out, things like that. And it appears that even though I've never had this problem, I looked back and Wizards of the Coast has a specific program for you to turn in your books if that happens, so you can get a replacement. Although one site I looked at said that process is time consuming. So if you get one and it happens to have screwed up pages or a binding, you can return it back to the company for a new copy.
That's awesome. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go down to the Four Horsemen and pick up a copy there, because then I could really check it out before I bought it. And then once I'm done reviewing it, maybe I'll hand it off to you, Stephen. You can just have it.
Sure.
I wonder if I could take my first edition D&D books where the entire binding's off the ends of them and everything and get those replaced. What do you guys think? Think that would work? My monster manual?
Good luck with that.
My DM's guide from like 1978.
That'd be like Samsoning it. You'd lose the magic. You cut the hair, you fix the binding, it no longer has its power. So no, don't do that.
I absolutely would not do that. Yeah, it's sort of like one of my guitars that has, the paint's worn off and scratches because I've played so many hours on it. I would never have that refinished. I mean, that's what gives it the, right? It's what gives it its character.
I have this original copy of the Necronomicon, and the binding's a little coming loose. Yeah. I want to turn it in for a new copy.
Yeah. It all has to be hand drawn in blood, though. You have to provide the blood and the skin, for the pages. So
the new one isn't magical.
Yeah,
it loses all its magic.
Yeah. Ooh, gross, yuck, ooh. You made me think of Willie Nelson's guitar, by the way.
Oh, mine's not that worn out. He's had many, many, many more hours on that old classical guitar that he plays than I have. So,
is it crafted from skin and drawn in blood?
Yeah, he's barely got like a pickup hanging in it, and it's like an old like $80 pickup sticking in it. I mean, it's hilarious. It's great.
Old piece of saggy leather.
I mean, there's just out from the hole of the sound hole of the guitar. It is literally worn away. It has a bigger hole in it than the sound hole. And he barely clips on, a really not a very good, like a Dean Markley $80, at least last time I saw him play, pickup in order, to play it live. But that's pretty awesome, really.
I'd hate to be the sound engineer for that cat.
Yeah.
I'd hate to be the spirit trapped in that guitar.
I would love to be the sound engineer for Willie Nelson. That would be a blast of a chore. A buddy of mine met him face to face when he was at UVA and was studying there and was involved in a concert they had at UVA and was backstage with Willie. And let's just say they had a pretty good time.
Nice.
Said he was most laid back individual he think he'd ever met. So, hey, Steven, what you got for us today? You got anything?
Well, yeah, I got a few things. The one that was making the rounds and my friends that play X-Wing, tiny spaceships, is that this week, and I never pronounce the name of this company right, probably, because I see it as 3 separate syllables as Mo D, like it's a person named Asmo D. I don't know. The people that are behind Fantasy Flight Games and X-Wing, they are, if I've got this correct, because it used to be Fantasy Flight Games was its own thing, and then Asmodee was involved, and over the past 3 years, X-Wing has gone through some pretty substantial changes where they essentially rewrote how many things in the game act, and they did a course correction, and you had to order new cards and new damage decks. And what?
Course correction, pun intended.
Course unintended. And so it was one of those things where the game needed it, and they took the rather dramatic step of actually correcting the game, something that Wizards of the Coast has struggled with Magic for ages. But they did so in X-Wing, and X-Wing has been going along swimmingly. Well, this week they announced that Fantasy Flight Games was no longer going to be the controlling entity for X-Wing, and they were switching it over to a company called Atomic Mass, another sub-company. And it's interesting to me that this happened because, for one of the lead designers
entered the chat.
Huh, Frank?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steven.
One of the things that happened was one of the lead designers tweeted on Monday. He says, "On Monday, I was abruptly and unceremoniously terminated by Asmodee North America. Whatever happens next, the past 8 years have been an incredible trip. To my friends, fans, and especially my coworkers who poured their blood, sweat, and tears into making the best damn game we could, thank you for everything. To Atomic Mass Games, who have been handed the fruits of that labor, good luck, and don't fuck it up." And that was Alex Davey, who was one of the lead designers on X-Wing. So that's a little bit of a shakeup there. And the people that I know who play X-Wing religiously are a little concerned about it.
Have you played, Steven, have you played the most recent rule set for X-Wing?
Yes, and it is a lot better. And I believe Frank and I, did you play
Oodles.
it once with me?
Oodles better. Oodles. Yeah, it's a lot. One of the things I really liked about version 2, and now I haven't kept up with it last a year and a half or whatever, but the biggest problem that version 1 of the rules had was it quickly became there were things that you should play and things you should never play. And assuming you wanted to win. If you didn't care about winning, do whatever you want. But if you're interested in ever winning, there was just ships that were pointless and worthless. There were card combinations that were worthless. And one of the things that always bothered me is X-Wings in particular were utterly pointless. With version 2.0, they got rid of a lot of that so that everything had a value, a real role to play within the game. And you could play meaningfully with any of them.
Yeah, I haven't played since I don't know what version I played with you guys. Do you remember what
version 1? You haven't played version 2.
Right. Version 1 I liked because I had the TIE Interceptor, and that was a lot of fun to play. The Phantom, rather. And that was
which they had to nerf because it was so ridiculously powerful in the right hands. And
and then if you would have played a little bit after you stopped playing, you would have been frustrated because they nerfed it so much that it was kind of a useless thing, which, that's where balancing these rules are really important. And I think that it makes sense to use a parody of Jefferson's line, renew the game set with the blood of the old game set a bit.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have been frustrated because that felt like an exploit when I utilized that particular setup. So I like more of a challenge and things where the game's a bit more balanced. It sounds like 2.0 achieved that.
It did.
Now, initially, I could say I don't know if they kept that. I mean, they had to keep releasing new product, right? Because that's where they make the money. So I don't know if they kept that going, and if they don't need to, burn it down again because I just haven't kept up with it personally.
I've sat in on a couple of games over the past 10 months and watched the guys who play religiously, and I've seen a more varied playing field as far as the ships that are used and the number of ships and the combination of ships and the tactics and things like that. I mean, there are still things that are standards, like if you're going to fly IG-88, you're going to fly 2. There are things like that are the same, and TIE swarms, but the field of what everyone's playing is a lot more rich than it was before. And I think it gives people who were frustrated with the way the game was and the powers of just certain clusters of ships and pilots and abilities, it spread that out. And I think, Frank, you had said when we tried it that, it puts a little more emphasis on, the ships and the flying and that part rather than, kind of magic combo time.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that I think version 1 got away from skill, which was always the power, to my mind, of the X-Wing, is that if you flew well, you could win. It was really hard to make a list that was so awful, there was no way you could win with it initially. But as version 1 got further and further along, that was the norm. You basically, if you showed up and said, well, I made a list like this because, it doesn't matter, it's going to lose. Unless you're playing against the worst player ever and you have the worst luck ever and they have the best luck ever. I mean, vice versa on the luck. But, unless that happens, you are going to lose. Version 2 fixed a lot of that. So you can say, well, I thought this neat idea, I would just roll with that. Well, and if version 1 felt a lot more like how I feel Magic feels.
Well, I mean, though, in that scenario, I mean, we're talking about miniatures combat, I'm assuming. I've never played the game, but I'm sure it's similar to, Traveler's combat, Starship combat system. I mean, wouldn't you at times set up scenarios where you say, I'm going to be this is my mission, and I'm going to use this, maybe in some instances that ship would be inferior, but maybe you set up a combat in which the two supposedly inferior ships are going to combat each other to make sure, to make you use new skills or to try something different or use this ship that's inadequate. I mean, I'm assuming that would be one of the, I mean, obviously some ships are always going to outclass other ships. I mean, it's just the way those kind of games work.
Well, they have a scenario system where you can play a kind of adventure with your ships, and you have particular ships with particular, they're outfitted, they've got a loadout of a certain type, and you can do those. But at least amongst the people that I know and that I've talked to, those are like a very, very tiny percentage of what people actually play.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the way most people play is bring your own list and have at it. And it got to the point where it was very normal to see scenarios where if you made bad choices because you just didn't know everything there was to know about the game, it wasn't that you had an inferior ship. You had a ship that simply couldn't hit, period. Just
Gotcha.
statistically speaking, that if you took down the other ship, it would be such an improbable set of rolls that it would be Luke Skywalker going against 20 Death Stars by himself type of improbability. He could do it.
It'd be just
but
like
only,
getting those womp rats back home in Beggar's Canyon.
he could do it, but
Have to do it
only
20 times.
but only if George is writing the script in the background. You know.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I've never played that game, but there used to be a hobby shop here in my town that they did a lot of miniatures combat. They did what's the one called when it's real popular?
Warhammer.
Warhammer. Yeah, they did a lot of that, but they also did Star Wars. And I just remember those miniatures were so beautiful. I wanted to buy the Star Wars miniatures just because they were just gorgeous. I never did, but you know they were expensive. But I was like, man, I would just like that sitting on my bookshelf. Those are gorgeous. I'm not sure what kind of company made them or anything like that, but they were already painted and look great. You know, so. You guys remember Dune, the Frank Herbert novel? No doubt.
What?
No, what's it called?
Doom.
Yeah, Dune,
Doom.
like Sand Dune.
Oh, like Doom.
The giant, right. The
As
giant
in
worm.
buggy? Are we talking about buggies?
Well, anyway, I'm sure
Dune,
everyone's just
Dune.
trying to be facetious. But, of course, Dune is based on the series of novels that were started by Frank Herbert in 1965, I think. Very, very famous classic science fiction. In 1984, there was a movie made by David Lynch, love it or hate it. I'm happen to be in the former camp, love that movie, watch it every time it comes on.
How can you not love a half-naked Sting? I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
I will kill him. Yeah, no joke. Hey, and so I like it. And then, of course, you know, as far as movies are concerned, sci-fi, around 2000, I think, did a couple of miniseries. They did Dune and they did Children of Dune. But oddly enough, Dune has been somewhat vacant from the role-playing game arena through the many years. And I did a little research on this. It looks like and that's odd because that property, I would think, would be very popular if anyone were to do it. But I know that in the mid-90s, I think it was called Last Unicorn Games, got the rights to it. And Frank Herbert passed away in 1986, so I think his son controls the estate. And they were developing it did develop a Dune collectible card game. They planned an RPG but never finished it. They ran into some legal disputes with the Herbert estate, and then Wizards of the Coast acquired Last Unicorn Games around the end of the 90s. And one of the agreements when they acquired the game was to finish some projects that they had, one of which was a Dune role-playing game. So in 2000, they released Dune, The Chronicles of the Imperium, with a limited run of only about 3,000 copies. And they had a lot more work in the way, but the Herbert estate wanted more money, so Wizards of the Coast shelved the whole thing. Now, as you well know, that, or maybe have heard or have not heard, there was a new Dune movie that was due to be released December 18th, which is about a month from now. But now that has been pushed back, I'm sure, due to the COVID.
And also the fact that it has 100% less naked Sting.
Well, that could be a factor, but be a factor.
I have a quick question. Which part of Sting? You said he was half naked. Was it the left half or the right half?
Oh, and you act like you've never seen the movie.
Yeah, he had the poster, so don't even.
Yeah.
This was actually zoomed in on that whole, Sting.
Yeah, with the caption it said, "I will kill him," with an exclamation point at the bottom of it.
I measured the distance between his nipples. It's a little off.
TMI, man. Anyway, so anyway, there is a new Dune movie coming out. I kind of got a little sidetracked there thinking about Dune's or Sting's nipples, but
getting that wrapped around your finger, that a problem?
Oh, here we go.
Oh God.
Yeah. So
Why?
anyway,
Well, half naked Sting was the real tea in the Sahara in Dune.
right. So Anyway, the movie has been pushed back to October 10th, but because this movie's coming out and Warner Brothers has that property, they're also apparently going to have a streaming show. They haven't launched their streaming service yet that I'm aware of, but one of the shows they have slated to come out is called Dune: The Sisterhood, which, staying with current times, is all going to focus on the Bene Jesuits, the all-female religious order. Don't know about any of that. The movie has been pushed back until the release date now is October 10th, 2021. So with all that information, everyone's saying, well, what's that have to do with role-playing games? Well, Modiphius announced that they were working on the Dune role-playing game, and last Friday, they just released some new artwork for the game. The game is supposed to be available late this year is the only information we're getting on that. And letting a little cat out of the bag, all of us, me in particular, they reached out to me because when you do a thing like a podcast, you get on everyone's mailing lists and press releases, so you have something to talk about. So they actually reached out to me and asked if me and my group wanted to beta test the Dune role-playing game. And so I got a advanced copy of it, read through the rules and stuff. And then sadly, we never got around to it. We hoped we were going to do that, but we were in the middle of playing some other games to report on. We still may, but it uses the 2D20 rule system, which when I read through it, it's a little different. I mean, you can roll those dice and have a combination success and failure in the same roll. Puts a lot of pressure on the DM to come up with a lot of things off the cuff, which can be fun. I don't know. We've not tried it in practice yet. I also have the full rule set to John Carter of Mars, which is also from Modiphius Games. Back in March or April during the COVID, they actually released the core rule book for free on PDF. So I downloaded that when I had an opportunity. So we're going to try those games at some point. I mean, few episodes ago, we all talked about some other games that we want to try first. But we'll get back with you on that. Anyway, keep your eye out for that. It looks like it's going to be pretty good. And we mentioned earlier Gale Force 9. They are also releasing a tactical board game that was originally published in 1979 by Avalon Hill. As far as I know,
there's a name I haven't heard in a really long time.
Yeah, they made all those tactical board games. But it's a remake of that, updated version of that. It should be available now if that's your thing. Take a look for it. Go to Gale Force 9's website. I know whenever I wrote some of these notes, we were going to report on this earlier, that I think it went on pre-order in August. So if that sounds like something fun, jump on there and check it out. So anyway, wrapping all that up, what do you guys think? You guys want to give it a try? Like I said, I do have that quick start rule set, the advanced copy of the game. Oddly enough, they never reached out to me, even though they said they would at the end of August, to get our impressions of the game during the beta test. They never did. So I don't know if they still will. I doubt it, because they were given the month of August to give our beta test and see what we thought. What do you guys think? I mean, I know we've talked about it before and actually looked at the rules. Is it something you're excited about? Some of the artwork looks great, by the way. Check it out if you get a chance.
I think we have like a lot of things already in the pipe. By the time we get around to it, they'll probably have released it. So I'm interested to check out the full rule set and the polished product, and then maybe play it then instead of doing the beta.
Yeah, we may even try John Carter of Mars first, just because it uses the same rule set, the 2D20, and I do have the full core rule book for it, including character creation, which is usually not included with any quick start rule set. May try it first, and if we like it,
Yeah, I'm all for the John Carter stuff and the Dune stuff, but our next thing, I mean, we're wrapping up Root this next week, I hope, and then the next thing we're going to be doing is OVA, assuming Steven is ready to go on that front.
What Steve's told me about the Dune game is it's set in the Dune universe. Well, that's interesting. Game rules are weird. Oh, and I'm not super into the Dune universe per se, so I mean, I'm a bad example, but I'm kind of curious. What do you guys feel about rules versus setting as far as what draws you to something? It kind of feels like rules are so much more important. Like if the rules suck, the setting can't overcome it. But if the setting is, terrible. Oh, I'll just do my own thing if the rules are okay. That's what I kind of feel like. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we've covered this to some degree in previous podcasts. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how bad those rules are. Obviously, you can't save anything with a really bad rule set, in my opinion. But most of the time, at least most of the games we're playing, like Root's a good example. That's a pretty different than a different fare than what we're usually used to in terms of the rule set and the way it's played. But I think it's opened up role-playing a whole lot more. Steven wasn't able to join us this last week, and this seems like prime Steven playground in terms of game mechanics. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know how much we can talk about Dune because, it's not out yet. We did sign a disclosure. So I don't want to talk about, we read through the rule set and I have a lot of opinions about it, but again, it's a beta. So I'd like to wait until it actually comes out and maybe Steve-O can tell us a little bit more about what we can and can't talk about in terms of Dune.
Oh, we're not supposed to talk about anything.
So breach of contract already.
Yeah, well, they said if we did, then we may not be invited to play another beta. So I don't think they would care to know that we were doing a beta, to let anybody know we're doing a beta.
If we do a party foul, we won't be invited to the next party. Fair enough.
Right. Go ahead, John, you had something?
Oh, I was going to go with what Frank was asking about, rule system versus settings and stuff. That's kind of a reason that I started making my own role-playing games, rule system, because there was some that we had played around with it that were really kind of, the settings, the ideas were really neat, but the rules were just horrible. I think you can kind of just, if you're going to go with a very generic kind of thing, kind of like GURPS, kind of idea, feel is that you can say, oh, well, we can just take any setting and throw it down on top of it. I remember when GURPS came out, that they just started coming out with settings and stuff for it that you just threw down, and there you go. So it'd have a lot of the information to back up the setting that you're going to play, some slight addendums to the rules, and they were very neat. I mean, I really liked that aspect of it, and that's what kind of spurred me to, create my own. I wanted to be more simplistic and a little bit easier to just get into. But like this game Root, it is, I don't want to say simple, but it seems to fit well.
It's decidedly uncomplex.
Right. But it kind of has this feeling that the rules kind of match the setting very well, you know what I mean? Where you have, these premises of these, or what is it? I can't think of the daggone name of them, but, the individual vagrants.
Moves.
Vagabonds.
Vagabonds.
You play different vagabonds that are animals, and there and so you have these kind of fairly simple rules in some of the stuff for each character sheet playbook is, I find it kind of similar to I kind of find it similar to D&D 4th edition, where it felt more like a card game, where you just kind of like, because like I played a ranger when we did 4th edition, and it's like, I'm going to do two shot. I mean, that it was almost like just pressing a button on a computer for what my action was going to be that turn. I think it kind of had a very, this is kind of similar in that you have a very set list of things you can do. So you have these moves, and it's very simple, but it kind of actually fits kind of okay for that kind of game. So it's almost like a board game with a little bit more environment to it, I guess. So I can see that, some stuff you can kind of extract the setting from the rules, and then some things are it kind of fits the rules very well. It kind of makes most sense there.
So campaign setting versus rules. Oh, so playing Dune sounds cool, but I'd like to be, the bastard offspring of a Bene Gesserit and a Mentat. I think that would be interesting. So if that ends up being an option and we play, I'd love to do that. I think that would be freaky. But
I mean, from what I understand, there's a lot of different character classes. Just throwing that out there. There's, you don't have to just be, you know, Paul Atreides clone. You can be a mercenary. You can be, you know, they leave it wide open. I don't know. Again, character creation isn't included with the advanced copy of the quick set rule set we got, or quick start rule set. But that's what they say. It's going to be a lot of variety.
Well, I hope so.
You can at least be a bastard. I know that.
Oh, well, thanks. I'll look forward to being a bastard. That'll be great. So the thing about setting versus system, you know, and based on what John was saying, and I think what Frank was alluding to, I think at this stage in our gaming that the rule set is more desirable, is something that I look at more than the setting. Like OVA, for example, I found it through my love of anime, but I became interested in it because of the rule set, not because it was something I could use to play anime, but something that I could use for anything because I really enjoyed the rule set.
I know for me, usually games that have a specific setting, such as Star Trek or Star Wars, I'm not a huge fan of, because as a game master in the past, I've always enjoyed writing my own background. Now, certainly I could do that in a Star Wars universe. I could just create a whole, you know, society or whatever. I know that.
It can be set on a backwater world what nobody visits that tends to be
the two suns.
Yeah, it could have two suns. It could have that, you know, that nobody goes to because they don't have any of those.
Main character could be a moisture farmer, so, or
maybe not a moisture farmer, maybe a dry air farmer. I don't know. You know.
But anyway, that's what I enjoy about gaming, in particular as a game master. So the setting for me isn't as important as the rule set, and I like the rule set to typically combat and all those sort of things to be pretty simple, so we can move on with the game. I mean, that's not always everyone's favorite style of play. Some people love the tactical thing and using all the different, and that's the thing. I haven't run a ton of fantasy. It's been a long time. I usually do science fiction where you don't have a lot of options about what you can do. So, you know, in Call of Cthulhu, there's not a lot of options. I mean, there's fight or flight with whatever you have available. And I like a more open-ended thing about suggestions about what the characters are going to try to do and not be really so tied down to the rules. Now with RuneQuest, which we're going to be doing after we do OVA, I'm going to try and do it all with the setting and the rules and try and do it all within that and see how that works. It's not something I'm particularly experienced about doing, but I mean, I can still write adventures. It's just I'll be using their campaign setting, but it's a campaign setting that was designed for a game, not trying to wedge a game into, you know, another property. So we'll see how it works.
Steven, you had another news item?
Yes, I've got 3, and 2 of them are short. The first one is pop-up terrain, because there was talk of pop-up terrain on the last time we met, and I was like, oh, come on, how, it's got to be something that'll wear out and flimsy, and, you know, I can't believe people are spending money on it and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. I started looking into it, and people are so incredibly stoked about this product, and God bless the people that decided to make it. For instance, you know, they've got on...
And he's an atheist.
Right. No. Agnostic. Hopeful agnostic. Especially in these trying times. But on EN World, I pray every night. I never used to pray. I pray all the time.
But God bless those people that make the pop-up things.
God bless them. Because, you know, on EN World, there's a thread, pop-up terrain. Is this the best thing since sliced bread? And the guy's like, you know, I just backed a Kickstarter campaign, and it's not cheap. $290 for the full set. People are really, really looking forward to this. And like I said, good on them for coming up with it. And I hope it's a thing, because I love pop-up books. I don't know if I mentioned before, but I've still got my first pop-up book, which was a book on dinosaurs from way back when. It's on my bookshelf downstairs.
Seriously?
You know, there's two ways you can get a product out there broadly. I mean, there's lots of ways, but there's two broad ways of getting a product out there. And I see in the guitar side of things, one dominant model, which is you release something, you send it to everybody, right? You just go, everybody and their brother in a YouTube channel gets a copy of your latest pedal or whatever it may be. And so there's this massive wave of reviews of this new product, whatever it may come out. The other is this word of mouth thing. And the pop-up thing has shocked me because I don't think they've sent that to everybody like you would with, a guitar pedal and one. I think that people are genuinely getting excited having discovered it. It's kind of grown organically, but quickly. It's really odd that the number of people are getting that excited about it.
Well, I think the difference is this is a really original idea. I mean, I'm not aware of anybody else doing that. So I think an idea is definitely going to spread, unlike just another rule book or another game book. Yeah, sure, they're going to send out that kind of stuff to all the reviewers and press people and all that because it's just another game. And they're going to try and say, well, their game's different than another, or a guitar pedal in your example. I mean, what really is going to be the difference? But this pop-up terrain thing, as far as I know, I've never heard of it before. And I looked it up after Jimmy brought it up on the show a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was. And yeah, it looks really nice. It looks nicer than I thought it would. Is it going to be expensive? For the full set, $290. I mean, look how much your average rule book costs. I mean, I just spent $60 on one core rule book for RuneQuest. So anybody that's really serious about their gaming, $290, or are there smaller sets you can get? Like kind of like build into it. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys know? Like $100 set?
So there's the dungeon set. I don't know that it's very much cheaper, but it does contain a lot of individual small pieces instead of like larger set pieces like buildings and things like that. It's more a dungeon with individual rooms, corridors, that kind of thing. So it wouldn't surprise me if they get some good feedback for the dungeon set that they'll actually start selling that as increase that set and add to it, and probably price will come down as they get more units sold, I would imagine. But it's no surprise to me whatsoever that these are becoming very popular, particularly for Warhammer gamers or people who play in that sort of arena, because they're very portable. They collapse flat. You don't have these huge terrain pieces that you carry to and from
big paper mache,
the locations where you're playing.
On a 4x8 piece of plywood, which is what I usually see people using with Warhammer or similar games. So, for sure, yeah, I think it's a great idea. If you're into miniatures and that type of combat, it'd be great.
Yeah, and when I started looking into the paper stuff, when I started doing the miniatures, I looked into the paper side of things, and there's a lot of people who will print those out. Actually, I believe it was Steven who sort of pointed me in that direction. We have our friend who's been on the podcast before, Chris, who utilizes some of those paper cutouts. And there's a underground group of people who just produce a lot of really cool stuff, and there's probably professional companies that also do the same thing. So it's not terribly new, but this approach to building these high quality, very durable pieces where you can actually set the miniatures on top of them, and also some of them have playable interiors, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, for sure.
So the other two items, the first one of the last two that I'll mention is my grave disappointment that I did not find out about this Amazon deal, and knowing, hopefully, that at least hundreds of fellow nerds did. And that was a couple of days ago. It seems that Gloomhaven went on sale for about $85. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a $140 game. And I'll read just a line. I ended up seeing this on Dicebreaker. Dicebreaker says, of course, if you don't know, Gloomhaven has been acclaimed as one of the best board games ever made since it first hit tables, overtaking the similar... I knew that talk of the Necronomicon was going to be bad earlier, Little did I know that I would be.
That you'd be quoting.
I'd be
it.
quoting it.
I'll be quoting it.
Allow me to read the rest of this backwards. So the important thing is that Gloomhaven is this incredible board game. And the cool thing about the game is that it evolves with you. So it's a 1 to 4 player game, right? And it has this branching system where there are permanent changes to the world and the game. You tear cards up, you put stickers on the board, you unlock character classes, you morph, you change, you evolve. And the game itself is not the same from group to group. And I had a lady that I worked with who participated in my game day lunches each week. And she and her group got it, and they loved it. They got it last year. They loved it. They went through it. It was wonderful. It was kind of this great blend between role-playing and board gaming. And in games that came before it, like Descent, for instance, it improved in every way, they said, on these other games that had that model. And the damn thing was on sale for $85 and I missed it. It's now only $20 off at $120 today.
I'm looking at it on Amazon right now. It says new options from $94.75. So maybe some other sellers, merchants that have it. But
I just gotta say, if it's over $100, I'm not ripping up stickering anything, just as a rule.
Oh, absolutely. Every time that she talked to me about it and they said they unlocked something new, I was just thinking, how could I do that and keep the integrity of the game and keep it the way keep the pieces.
Right.
You'd have to have this journal on the side, right, where you noted the Chronicles of Gloomhaven as you went, and you could have like a different set of chronicle depending on the players that are playing in this particular game. It'd be kind of neat.
Yeah,
I'm still not going to spend $120 on it, but it'd be kind of neat.
Well, it's like I've got the first edition of Descent downstairs in the basement, and I have like 3 of the 4 big expansions, and I've never played it. It was a gift that another nerd passed on to me. But it's so complicated. Family into it. And think of a game that I could play that would be role-playing and board gaming, all that I could play with my family during quarantine, and Gloomhaven's it, but I'm not gonna, I can't spend that much money on it. However, if you have money that you'd like to pass on for a good cause, bum, bum, bum. No, this isn't a pitch for us. It's a Comic Relief. And last year, Comic Relief played Dungeons and Dragons for one of their fundraisers. And so this year at 7:30 on the 4th of December, they're having a few comedians that I will admit I have never heard of play Dungeons and Dragons.
But I bet they're funny.
2. They are probably
Who do
funny,
they have?
especially because one of them has the last name Wang.
Oh, has to be funny.
And he looks very serious in his picture. His name is Phil Wang.
You know what?
And-
With that last name as a comedian, you really only have 2 options,
Are
right?
you sure it's not Wang?
Ignore it 100% or lean into it 100%.
Right.
There's only 2 options. You can't really just go, yeah, I have a funny last name, and then like move on to something. You just have to like.
I think there's just one option there. Just
I
one.
think you could get away with turning it into a meta joke by just never addressing the Wang in the room.
Exactly. And, the fact that his first name is Phil and he can be P. Wang, it just...
Well,
If his middle name was Aaron, he'd be Phil A. Wang.
well, now in China, from what I understand, there's quite a few Wangs. And there used to be Wang computers.
There did.
There used to be a lot of people sitting around playing with their Wangs. I mean, back in the day.
And there were people doing that. And another God bless. Let's have another God bless shout out
Yeah,
to
we
the
go.
man with the last name Wang who became a
And
comedian.
his friend, Chung.
Dun dun dun. But just to tell people that Comic Relief, from their page, they have, through humor and stories of hope, we've shown that people can make a massive difference, and they support hundreds of organizations around the world that are working with vulnerable people and communities and trying to help them out. And they've got a kind of a new mission with the hardest hit by coronavirus. So Comic Relief has been around for ages. They do good work. If you want to see some comedians play with, I don't even want to say. I wanted to make a joke about it,
They're
but the poor guy, not the poor guy. I mean, he's a comedian and he's on this thing. I'm sitting here in a closet talking into a makeshift microphone with you dorks. So, I mean, you know, he's sitting at home, you know, with his wonderful comedian life going.
The question is, what class should Wang play?
I'm not going to touch that.
But
You're not going to touch the Wang.
He's not going to touch that Wang with a pole, so that suggests monk. You know.
And it was
some Wang
that Roleplay Geeks earned its double explicit label.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm gonna say he should be a bard.
Okay.
Use his Wang wisely.
Yeah, his language.
The Wang is for the Wang is for crowd control.
His Wang.
Oh man, maybe we should just move on.
Please, let's.
I think that would be wise.
All right. So more Modiphius news. And the reason I always have Modiphius news is these guys put out a newsletter every week. So
his language.
We got to wait for Jimmy to move on. It takes him a little longer.
I am Sir Wang of the Wildwood.
Do you see how amazingly awesome this guy is? That even not being here, just his mere name has inspired comedy.
Yeah.
I'm looking him up. I'm going to go download all of his material.
Or
and check
he could go the other way. I'm the magician, Phil.
Phil.
They call me Phil.
Okay.
That cured my laughter.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Monty Python, Sir Tim, all that stuff. Oh, you people suck.
So I've got another quick piece here. Again, Modiphius, and this news should come to you before. I'm sure this is going to air not this Monday, but next Monday, and it'll be before then. But ModCon, they're having an online convention, Modiphius. It's going to be from the 3rd to the 6th of December. The event will run alongside UK's Dragon Meat Convention. And so they're going to have some joint panels, how to be a great GM, some things like that. You know, your typical con type things. So sounds like fun. I'm not sure if it costs anything. I do have a sign up, so I'll probably sign up for it. It'll be in a couple of weeks, and I'll try and sit through some of it and see what it's like, as long as it's free, because I'm a cheapskate. Spend all my money on, core rule books. But anyway, sounds like might be pretty fun. I'm sure it's going to mostly, if not completely, cover their games, but they do have a lot of games. So ModCon 2020, check it out. December 3rd through the 6th, and just go to modiphius.net and you can find that, or just look up Modiphius Games. Sign up for their newsletter and you will get more information about their game company than you've ever wanted. Those guys have only been around like 3 years. They're a UK-based company. They've not been around very long at all, and they've got quite a few properties. They have, the Elder Scrolls, based on the video game, and of course we talked about Fallout. They've got Conan. They got Star Trek. Of course, they have Dune coming out. They have several other games, and they have some, war games too, board games. So they do a version of Call of Cthulhu called Achong Cthulhu, that how you say that German word, John?
Achtung?
Achtung. And it's Cthulhu based on characters in World War II somehow. I don't know exactly what it's about, but I know that's what it's based on. But yeah, they have quite a few properties and quite a few games, and haven't been around that long. So check them out. I've got one other thing, but I think I'm going to wait till next week.
Will it still be news?
It's not really. It's kind of news, but it's news more about stuff that pertains to us. I mean, it's not a news item that you would find somewhere. It's something I ran across that I wanted to talk about.
Oh, well, yeah, screw us. Just go on with whatever else.
No, I'm not saying
the
that. I'm
mystery
just saying I
going.
might want to wait and save it for next week. That's all. I mean, I can say it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and wait.
Well, you
Go ahead
said
and
you
wait.
had
Keep
another
it from
item.
us. Keep it from us. I think.
Say it right now, buddy.
No, don't say it. Don't say it.
Watch your language.
It's hard
I
to top.
cannot believe.
It's hard to
that
top
came
the
out.
Wang jokes.
That was just.
I mean,
That's just not. It was. It was not.
yeah, that's probably going to be wrong in so many ways. So
So, at
yeah,
this
send your hate
particular
mail to me. That's
point in
Okay.
the podcast,
So since I jumped on midstream, did you guys talk about the state of Mongoose 2020?
We did not.
No.
Okay, so Mongoose.
I even looked for Traveler. News, and I didn't see anything.
Well,
got
you didn't look very hard, now did you, there, buddy?
Yeah, we got to keep the
that
drinking
sucks.
game going. I mean, these people are
Yeah.
dead sober by this point in the show.
So there's a couple of interesting things. Mongoose has a state of Mongoose every year about this time of year, end of October, beginning of November. And since Mongoose does a lot of different games, as we've mentioned, but Traveler Drink is by far the biggest and longest running and probably most important of all the games they do. They've got a couple of interesting Kickstarters out there that are the big things they're coming up with this year. And one I think is kind of cool. It reminds me some ways, don't get too excited, Stephen, because it's not in the way that you think. In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of some aspects of BattleTech, but it's not in the way that you think. It has nothing to do with big robots. Big robots have nothing to do with anything with any of this.
Oh, hold on a minute. How can it be it's sort of like BattleTech without giant robots? That is
If
BattleTech.
if I said sort of like some aspects of BattleTech, I specifically chose those words. And if you let me finish, I can tell you it's called Mercenary. And the idea here is that you create a mercenary crew. Everyone can pool their mustering out benefits and create a mercenary company that goes and does things for hire. That part of BattleTech, that's how it's like that. We have an entire video.
but no robots.
Again, no robots. But there,
That's nothing like BattleTech.
well, agree to disagree. So anyway, that's coming up, and that'll be kind of interesting because the mustering out benefits have always been, to my mind, one of the neater things that Traveler does, but also kind of weird and kludgy. Like they don't mesh really well when you're coming with a party, and sometimes it's kind of, oh, who's going to get the ship is the mustering out benefit. Okay, and the rest of it is just you got a gun and some money.
And then what happens
whatever.
when somebody gets two ships? You know, that happens. too.
Right. And or you get a share of a ship. What does that mean? You know,
Right.
it's always been, I think it's interesting, but doesn't really work as a mechanic. So I think it's kind of cool if they do this sort of pooling of things to form a mercenary company. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, there was back during the classic Traveler days, there was a set of miniatures rules called Striker that was all about, you know, using grav tanks and ground combat and all that sort of stuff. And they actually, if you remember, book 4 was called Mercenary. You know, it addressed that as well. And we all loved it. There was a section in the book called Ironmongery. It had all these futuristic weapons that weren't included in the basic rule book. And I remember everyone would always turn right to that section and look up all the man-portable fusion weapons and all this really neat, you know, high-tech battlefield equipment. But they, you know, that would be great. That's a nice addition to the second edition. I can't remember, Jimmy, did because I think I've got quite a bit of first edition stuff, but I don't remember what the Mercenary book was like in the not first edition, but Mongoose first edition also had some type of mercenary. My books are in the other room where I take a look.
I don't
Well, there's a mercenary book, but I don't know if there's a
remember.
Right.
Yes.
Well, now the idea of, like you're saying, where you are going to pool your resources to create a mercenary, squad or crew or whatever. I think that's great. That's an awesome idea.
Okay. So the second big project they're working on is something called the Fifth Frontier War. All right. And so it's its own subline within the Traveler universe. And this is probably less dominant to our concerns because we tend to do our own thing, but there's some cool stuff that's coming out of this. It's a 2 to 3 year long thing they're doing. So it's a long form, and it's going to start from the instigation of the war from both sides and work all the way through to the end. And it's actually going to include Mark Miller in the design and implementation of this. So as a campaign setting, I think it could be something really compelling for people who are into Traveler, because you can get from literally ground zero to the end and cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always up for any Traveler products. Well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about one of the items I was going to bring up.
Hold on a second. There's more I won't want to cover in the Mongoose. There's a couple more items, relatively minor, less important for Jimmy, but there actually are 2 Traveler computer games they're working on. One of which is centered around the Fifth Frontier War, and the second one is a more RPG-centric game. Now, Traveler computer games have had a stored and weird history, and whether this actually gets to print is a whole different situation, but it's pretty exciting. They are working on not 1, but 2 computer games based upon the Traveler drink.
That is exciting.
If something could bring me back to the video game thing, it would be Traveler.
Mm-hmm. I remember playing Mega Traveler years ago, and this was on, tells you how long ago it was. It was on my Amiga computer. So I think they went bust in 94 or something like that, 92. But anyway, I got a piece on Traveler. I was perusing the drive-through RPG, which is a site I love to go to and just see what's on there. Can't urge listeners enough to check out Drive-Through RPG. There's just tons of stuff available, a lot of free stuff on there. If you just want to dip your toe into a game, there's all kinds of supplements, and people publish all sorts of things. But anyway, when I was going through there, I found the T5 Core Rulebook 3-book set. Now, this is just PDF, but it's $44.95 now. So, as opposed to $99, which is the MSRP. Now, just so listeners understand, right now, there are 2 versions of Traveler. There's Mark Miller, who created the Traveler game and did all the classic stuff that we know from a company called Game Designers Workshop. And after GDW went bust, after the T3 or Traveler, the New Era, was kind of their last product as a company, sometime in the mid-90s, he came out with T4, which wasn't very well received, mainly because of the printing of the books and things like that. But then I guess a couple or 3 years ago, I'm not sure when this was published, which you can still buy the printed books from Far Future Enterprises, which is his new company. You can still buy the printed books for $99. But I really thought about just going ahead. I mean, and so what else is available now is, of course, what we usually talk about in the rule set we use is Mongoose Traveler. Now, what Mark Miller and the Traveler guys have always done through the years is they've allowed other companies to use the Traveler rights to create other games. I guess they just, they make money on it. Like there was GURPS Traveler. There's been all kinds of Traveler supplements and things that I guess they've made some type of licensing off of it. So right now, there's 2 different rule sets available that are in print. And one is T5, which is Mark Miller, the original guy that created the game, and then Mongoose Traveler, which we use Mongoose Traveler for our games. But you were going to say something, Jimmy?
Yeah, T5. That's the version of Traveler that's written in binary.
Right.
John's the only one that can understand
So
it.
when I ran across this,
You have to hear this noise every time you read it. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah. So when I was when I ran across this, and I've thought about buying T5 just because I am a big Traveler fan, I started kind of digging into some of the differences. And you are correct. Book 1 is characters and combat. Book 2 is starships. Book 3 is worlds and adventures. And it delves into some complex ways to create starships of your own. And it delves into complex ways to create worlds and adventures of your own. A lot of math and that sort of thing, which I think Frank had touched on a few episodes ago when we were talking about Traveler. And Mongoose is not that way at all. But there was one thing that I ran across that I wanted to bring up to the group and see what you guys think. So it's a skill-based game, same as Mongoose and other games. So let's look at gun combat. If you're playing, let's say, the Mongoose version of Traveler, that's all it looks at for your roll, right? So let's say gun combat, you roll it, either you get it or you don't, based upon some other modifiers. Well, in T5, apparently, not only does every roll consider your skill, it also considers your attributes. So it's a combination of the two. So, for instance, if you have, let's say you've got a pretty decent gun combat skill, but your dexterity is very low, which I think would be the primary attribute, then it would lower your chance of success. Or if you have a very high dex, it could increase your chance of success. Let's say in real life, no matter how much you trained with guns, if you had a 3 dexterity, you're never going to be a very good shot, no matter how many hours you spend playing with guns or practicing or going to the shooting range. And then there's going to be some people that's just because they have a high attribute, a natural skill to do it, they would pick it up very quickly and become very good and proficient with. What do you guys think about that? Combining attributes with every skill roll. Too much? Or do you think that has some validity?
I mean, that's the way I do it in all my games, and I'm pretty sure actually original rules actually had it that way. I think that's partially the idea of in Traveler, when you would take damage, it came off your primary physical attributes, strength, dexterity, and endurance. And so when you go below something, then you lose that bonus that you might have had if you had a high dexterity or high strength or high endurance. So I think that was already there and stuff. They may have just made a little bit more upfront about, this is how you.
Yeah, I think they've made it more. Yeah, exactly. I think they've made it more integrated into the actual system for successfully making a roll. Or
I think that makes sense. I think that your attributes should always be tied to your skills in the positive or the negative.
Sure. And I'm not sure if it's a modifier or whatever. It was just some comments I was reading, doing some research on the game, and some guy making a comment on the actual rule set said that it was more pronounced in T5. Maybe somehow it attributes to every role. I don't know. But anyway, I don't know. Yeah. I might buy it. Not sure.
Yeah, I can't comment on T5 because I have not seen anything other than some reviews. Some people say it's okay, but most people say it's like a binary encyclopedia.
Mm-hmm. Some people like it, but more people prefer Mongoose. And I really like the Mongoose rules personally. I mean, they keep it pretty simple, and I like that.
I understand the logic of tying abilities or skills specifically to attributes, but I've always thought it was a little weird in that trying to separate out one from the other. I'm trying to think how I articulate this. To use your real life example, the more you try to do something, the better you get at it, up to your natural ability. So in that context, something like dexterity should be your ability forever. It should be your I'm trying to think how to articulate this. It's very difficult.
Yeah, except for that's your natural ability, your talent, let's just call it talent, for being able to do anything. Maybe you're going to be more athletic. I mean, some people are just born more athletic than others. So the only thing that would modify that in the future would be an aging out, which there's, with the older you get, there are charts for that, for losing some abilities, some attributes. And then, of course, as Steve said, or John said, in the in the rules, whenever you take damage, you've shot or whatever, your attributes are gonna drop as well. That makes sense. I think you're injured or whatever, so you can't fire your gun as effectively. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, but what I'm getting at is that I think that they have a relatively small impact. They should have a relatively small impact. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that somebody with a high dexterity could get to a higher level, or someone who is naturally athletic can get to an athletic ability faster. But that doesn't mean that I can't get to that athletic ability up to the physical limitations of whatever it is we're talking about. So being able to run I'm going to completely talk outside of my limit, but how long should it take to run a mile? No, on a normal human being, I have no idea. Anyone? 20 minutes. Okay.
Like we would know either.
Right. Well, Jimmy would know because he used to run. So that's
a very athletic person can do it in 5 minutes. There was the whole big thing of the 5 minute mile. Let's say 6-7 minutes.
Let's say a half hour. Let's say that the ability to run a mile in a half hour. All right. That everybody should be able to master that within a year of trying it every day. Right. I mean, that should be it's just some people, it's not going to take a year. Some people, it's going to take the first time they do it. Right. It's just when we start getting on the fringes, these things start to have an impact. Is that when we're talking about the sub 5 minute mile, then, all right, there's people who can't do that. Most people can't do that. There are a lot of people who can't do that. The fastest in the history of the world would be, I don't know, whatever the hell it is, but there's only one of those people. Right. So what I'm getting at is the skill, ability, interaction, I think, is a lot more complicated than we boil it down in these games. So I think that somewhat getting bogged down to that is sort of pointless.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like that too. Like, let's not get it. I like simple rule systems. I've said that over and over on this podcast that I that's one thing I like about Chaosium games and Traveler is just you can get the combat resolved quickly and move on with the story. But also, I would mention that you can get this rule set now. They have 2 available at Amazon. Last time I checked, you can get the printed version for $75. So, I don't know. You gonna buy it, Jimmy?
No.
Save your money for more Mongoose stuff. That's probably me too. Yeah.
Hey, we're in the middle of COVID, and I don't know how much longer I'll have a job, so I'm storing my money away for now.
Yeah, squirreling it away.
That's right. Squirreling it away.
Peaks by what it looks like. My biggest issue that I found in at least original Traveler rules was the problem that since you're only rolling 2d6, the way they have your bonuses set up for like having a high dexterity is that I think it's something like it has to be 10, like a 10, 11, or 12 gives you a +1. And then 13, 14, I think you can only get like a +2 bonus is what it kind of amounts to. Is the highest bonus you can possibly get. And that's like having a 15 dexterity, which is the highest in the thing. So the problem you have with that is that there's no real difference between like a 10 dexterity and a 12 or 13 dexterity, maybe. I don't remember the exact number. Maybe it's 9 and 12 or something. They're both +1. And so you don't get really much difference between those. And so you have just this huge gap between having a high dexterity or not. And so it kind of comes down to you really have to try and if you want to kind of min-max, your character when you're creating and stuff, you really have to kind of push to try and get a decent dexterity or a decent intelligence or decent strength or whatever that you want for your character. It's tough to get it to the point that it actually matters in a game that has such a small range by using 2d6 for determining success or failure.
Right. Well, the one time that it could make a difference, though, is on a pure dexterity roll. A 9 and a 10 would make a difference with that one number. If you need to do climbing or something that's not a skill, but something that the GM decides that you need to make a dexterity roll to avoid a trap or something like that.
You're just making a roll based on your skill. Yeah, exactly right. That can make a huge difference. So, but that's what I'm kind of getting, like with D20, that's kind of part of it comes down to, the rule system and stuff. So like with D20, then you have much larger, it's not a lot, but it's almost double the range of scores. And so that, basically they do it at every 2 points, you increase your dexterity by 2 points, you increase your modifier by a point. So it's not that bad, I guess. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just helps some, I think. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's
Oh,
something I've always never been crazy about, the D6s. It does leave a lot to be desired in the amount of nuances you can add or subtract from a roll. I know we've had that conversation before. I like percentile dice, but then maybe it's too much, but the D20, pretty cool.
Well, that's the reason I went with it personally.
Mm-hmm.
I used percentile. It just
Yeah, I
gives
mean,
you
it's
a
what
lot.
chaosing uses pretty
Right.
much.
Well, then when you can look at other things and stuff, I mean, if you or if you're just trying to look at stuff in general, like compare it to real world, we do so many things by percentage, it just fits in pretty well. So
For
we're
sure.
looking at the wrist for time.
Yeah, even though he's
Yeah,
not
it's a
wearing
weird place to look at your percent chance. My wrist. That's kind of odd. He's not doing the wrap it up signal though, which is weird. He's not doing the that. Yeah, he's not doing that. He's spinning around. He's spinning. Jimmy wants to say something. What's he wants to say? I can't tell. He's twirling. He's spinning.
No, I'm doing the wrap.
Oh, okay.
Thing.
All right. So with that, apparently we're supposed to wrap up the episode. We've gone a bit lengthy talking about nothing. It was sort of the Seinfeld episode. So if you have any thoughts or anything we've talked about, feel free to hit us up in the contact information. Steve-O will talk about what he's going to talk about next week.
No, that was it. Remember?
I actually had to go away and get a charger, so I missed it.
Oh, you missed that part. Okay. Well, I wanted to just remind everyone, and these guys hate it when I give them a plug, but Steven has a new podcast called Game Mastery. Check it out. And Jimmy has Tabletop That, which is a YouTube channel where he creates miniatures. So don't forget to check out those other two outlets as well. And with that, we will call it a day, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Wrap it up.
That's all we have for this week. Thanks for spending time with us. Please leave a review and comments wherever you listen. It helps others find the show. If you have topic suggestions or would like to get in touch, you can reach us at roleplaygeeks@roleplaygeeks.com. Head on over to the website for an archive of all our previous shows, as well as links to all our social media channels. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week.